Hello, everyone. This is Jeffrey Tefertiller back with another Service Management Leadership podcast. So I have a great guest. He's been on with us before, David Billouz. And David is a talented guy. And I say that because he's in the IT service management world and prints, but he's also does it across several languages, across several countries. And many times I struggle with the English language being my own. So it's great having you on, David.
Thank you. Nice to be here, of course. And I'm sure that I struggle much more with English that you can do by yourself. So thank you for these nice words. And yeah, I use English, but I also deliver in many other languages, any kind of knowledge I can get from service management perspective. So really thank you. And I appreciate your invitation today. Thank you.
Oh, it's great having you. And so David was one of the 5 reviewers for my book. And I picked different people from different countries, client side, consulting side, just to get different viewpoints. Because one of the things I think that we don't realize as we grow up and mature is that we need people to help us find our blind spots. And so I appreciate your feedback and the others just to help me see my blind spots. And so I really appreciate it. So today we're going to cover 3 topics. And so you've been in the ITIL world, service management world, prints, all of that for a long time. And I value your opinion, your input, and your perspective. And I think the audience will too. So the first topic as we begin is in the book, and I talk about transitioning to ITIL 4, and I talk about the first thing you have to do is find your GPS moment. And I use an analogy of you're at an amusement park, you're at a shopping mall, and there's this display of a map, and you see the little star, and it says, "You are here." ITIL 4 talks about it, and the guiding principle, start where you are. Why do you think it's important for people, organizations, to understand their current state of their program and their process, just to understand current state before they embark on whatever's next?
Oh yeah, I think that I would say that there are 4 main reasons why we should use or apply this principle. One of them is, of course, we say that if you know where you are and if you know what you have, then you have to first of all leverage it. So it means that it's not like perpetually, constantly recreate things from scratch. It's a temptation. And honestly, in many organizations, you have this temptation for different reasons. One of the key reasons is you have a new boss, you have a new, let's say, middle manager. What is the reflex of this person? He wants to, have his own territory in the organization. What it means, it means that by marking his territory, he will say, okay, what has been done before doesn't interest me. We need to change it. We need to rebuild it. So, there is a kind of culture of making things better, meaning rebuilding from scratch. I think it's a mistake.
Yes.
And it's a big mistake. And that's also the reason why in ITIL, they speak about service management, as a set of capabilities. So it means that you don't need just to know what you have in terms of resources, but what are your capabilities. If you don't know what you have, then you have a very short journey to meet your great plan, because GPS, you can say that there are great plans starting. So
yeah, you mentioned 2 things there. In the US, we have a term called throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And that's what happens. And the other fallacy of that thought process is leadership stays at a shorter time today than they did in the past. And if all the times you keep churning everything that was done before because, they're a bunch of idiots and I'm the smartest person mentality, then you'll never be able to grow. And so you mentioned capabilities. The other thought that I had was, when we look in the mirror, some people see themselves as more attractive or less attractive. And I think the same thing happens in our service management organization. So, when I've consulted, people thought, oh, we're way more mature than they really are, or way less. Is that your perspective as well on that capability side?
Yeah, it is true, and it's in fact when I have these discussions with my students, for instance, in training courses, and they have kind of difficulties to understand what capability means and why it's so important. Why ITIL don't speak about resources but really focus on capability, because it's very difficult in an organization to know what the potentials are and where they are. For instance, I know that I speak different languages. In many cases, it's a real capability. I mean, I don't use my French language, unfortunately for me, in business, but I know that, and it's just an example. And in organization, I would say that this part of having an inventory of the available capabilities is one of the key performance, let's say, not indicator, but key performance factor that will help the organization to really save money and ensure a sustainable growth. And that's a key thing. So I totally agree with you. One other things I wanted to say about the starting from where you are principle is also something that we don't mention many times. It's about you mentioned, as in your book, you said that when we look at the current state, we also look at, for instance, the failure is project is based on resistance to change. And in fact, this is very important to know this history, because start where you are. When you look at that, I give you an example, okay? Let's take a metaphor of a trader. You are a trader, and you trade, let's say, on Forex, or you trade whatever you want. And in trading, you have these two key concepts: resistance and support. What does that mean? It means that when you reach a certain amount, a price for a stock or whatever, then you know that people will they will be reluctant, they will resist to sell you at this price. But once you break this resistance, this price becomes your support. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is very important to know that, because in fact, when you map your current state, this current state comes from a resistance that became a support. And that's the story. When your organization evolves in terms of processes, in terms of services, it's always from a resistance to a support. And this is very important, because if you come back to another resistance, so you break the support back, then your organization will have big troubles.
So let me repackage that, okay? You're putting
that.
You're moving towards ITIL 4. There's resistance. Yeah. And then once you get to whatever that current state is, because it's a phased approach. So you take your first step and you're like, okay, first thing we want to do is metrics. And then we want to address our value streams and our change management, now enablement, all that, right? Every time we push something forward, there's resistance, cultural and even effort-wise. And then over time, that becomes, we have to support that because it's now our as is. And then we can come back through and add to that, which would then be more resistance until then it becomes as is and it becomes support. Did I get that right?
Yeah. And what I wanted to say is that don't just focus on the current state by just having the as is, but also understand how you came to this as is situation. Because if you know that, then you know how you can manage the risk to come back to a previous resistance. That's very important. And that's sometimes also something that is forgotten in organization, the history, and not just, a one-shot movie.
Lessons learned is one of the things that I don't think personally or professionally we do enough. We don't use them for our benefit to say, how could we do better next time? Because if it's good, we're too busy patting ourselves on the back. And if it went poorly, we're like, I don't want that's somebody else's problem. I don't want to deal with it. Where, that's why we have problem management, is to help us with those lessons learned. Change helps us, incident, but those lessons learned are invaluable.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And but this is once again based on human nature, because lessons learned, you always want others to learn something and to apply what they learned. It's like paying taxes. Everybody wants to pay taxes, but when it comes to you, you would prefer that it would be your neighbor. That's exactly the same with lessons learned. Okay,
oh, yes.
So
in the US, it's the US, it's like, yes, we need more prisons, but I want them way over there. I don't want them in my backyard, or things like that. It's always, oh, that's a good social idea, but far away.
Yeah, and in fact, in lessons learned, it is true that there is it really depends on the business. For instance, if you look at the consultancy company, of course they embed the lessons learned, because then it comes an added value service that they can sell to their customers. But in many cases, it's not only about monetizing it, but it's just the fact that using it, nobody is motivated by doing that. It's a nice story, it's a nice idea, but nobody gets the motivation for that, and that's a crucial thing. So we are back in the leadership, and we are back in the fact that managers, middle management and top management, should motivate people not only to gather lessons learned at the end of a project, but of course to use them. Not, it's always the same story. Lessons learned, you just have three things. You start doing things that can really be helpful. You stop doing things badly or wrongly, and you continuing doing things that you really learn from another experience. That's very easy on the paper, but in reality, it's another story.
So I want to go back. Oh, do you have another point, or did I cut you off?
I just wanted to say one thing about the starting barrier, and that's the last one. When we use the as-is analysis, when we have the current state with different approaches, there are a lot of approaches that are used or can be used in ITIL 4. But one thing is important is that with this principle, we can, prevent organization to have unrealistic goals. That's very important. Because, in this continuous improvement model, the first thing is understand the vision. But if the vision is realistic or not, it is when you come to the starting where you are that you match what they want with what they can really afford.
Right, in that afford could be due to internal expertise, it could be for money, it could be for time frame. I wanted to circle back when you talked about capabilities, and this is a part that I think we miss in the service management world, is the first thing we need to do, my opinion, and I welcome feedback, is understand the value streams, the alignment with the business. We have to understand all of that. What is our business trying to do? What are the value streams? And then see how our capabilities match up and align to those. And if we have holes, then we need to address them at the high level and let those cascade downward. And I don't think that we do a good job of aligning what we do and our capabilities to the greater mission, greater strategy, greater value streams. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and that's why a good example of that is anything related to talent management, generally speaking, because people are a good example of capabilities, in fact, in an organization, and exactly that's what you say. You can send people to some trainings, okay, just like that, because you have a budget for that. That's exactly the wrong case. The right case, it belongs to a strategy where you say, okay, what are the skills we need? What are the capability we need in terms of people to conduct and to deliver our strategy? And then we match it by saying, okay, here are the training needs we have, and then we send people to the right training. with some feedback and added value. So yes, I totally agree with you.
And lastly, before we move on to the next one, when we talk about where we are, I look at it as a program, and I told V3 process maturity assessment. Understand what you do well. In that assessment, it could be, how well do we do continuous improvement? How well do we collect our feedback? I was on an engagement 6 months or so ago, and they had no customer satisfaction, customer experience engagement, right? Like we don't care what they say. And I'm like, well, you're about to, because we're service providers. And so I always match up to the CMMI scale and do it. Everybody has their own way. And I was setting this up because what is a way that you do it? Because like I said, we all do it differently because we're all different people. But how do you go about understanding that GPS moment?
Oh, so I like to first of all, I try to very quickly identify the areas that can become quick wins. In order to do that, honestly, for instance, if we just talk about processes because we talk about this, what I usually do and what I think is useful is that I'm using ISO 20000.
Yes.
For that. Because you have a limited number of processes with regard to the practices of ITIL, but it gives you, in a very structured way, a good picture of how mature, or how they are compliant with these processes with the standard, but how they are mature and what can be an action plan for you to build a real manageable CMDB, or for instance, to have a real good let's say a service desk, because this is the image of the IT service provider towards the users. So that for instance, in terms of processes, that's what I'm using. Just an example.
That's interesting, because like I do it totally, everybody has their way.
Of course.
I use the V3 process activities and measure the maturity of each activity and baseline it from there with the questions that are like incident. How well do you prioritize? Okay, let's look at metrics. How well do we prioritize our incidents? Just use something made up there. But the point that you bring up that's really interesting to me, you mentioned CMDB. There is no way, this is a strong statement, and so I welcome feedback. There is, from you and from the people watching, there is no way that you can do a process or practice maturity assessment on a CMDB in the US, because everybody thinks it's a tool problem, not a process problem. And so they have a tool that I'm not, whichever tool it is, and it says, oh, you're 60% health. And the person's like, that's not good enough. We need to understand things. And it's one thing to go through the configuration management activities, but there are certain things on CMDB that makes it totally different than all the rest that have to be addressed, like scope, like attributes, like talent, that you'll never be successful without it, because most people see it as a tool problem, not a process problem.
Yeah, absolutely right. I remember there was one customer, a very big organization in France with 170,000 users, and they wanted to manage the USB keys of the user in the CMDB.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. So it's always the same. If you don't manage the why are you doing all that, then you come to these kind of things where people forget this why. And what do? Okay, can I add some attributes? And then, okay, how can I create an inventory to be sure that I can update? And it becomes, a nightmare, a kind of something without any and the sad story about that, it costs a really tremendous amount of time and money for nothing at the end of the day, because you forget the right question. Why do I do that? Why do I need a CMDB? Why do I need a CMDB in conjunction with change enablement? Why do I need a CMDB in conjunction with incident management? Why? And what is necessary for me to do my job? So people, start by big things, and exactly what we say, start where you are. Start just with, let's say, just applications, just, for instance, the key let's say the network components. Just that's it. Don't put the workstation in your CMDB. Don't put other things that you will never be able to manage at the first cycle. Okay, but people forget that, and that I have the same the same, let's say, opinion about the CMDB, even if I don't use a very strong statement as you said. But at the end of the day, my experience is very similar to yours.
Well, mine was I'm not going to mention, but very large firm here in the U.S., very large, never been above 59%. And the last one, they flipped on discovering it, found everything, and they couldn't make heads or tails of it. You know, they couldn't make sense of it because there was just too much. There wasn't a why, as you mentioned. And as we talk about start where you are, all I was trying, got a little bit off track, but that's always fun. Just the CMDB is a little bit different than looking at the individual processes or practices or the program as a whole. And the other caution in there from my experience is not to look at CMDB or service mapping, things of that nature through a tool-centric lens, because it's delicate. Yeah. It's delicate, yeah. Right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. Totally agree with you.
Let's move to the second topic.
Yeah.
If we know where we are. Hey, you are here. And how do you recommend taking that first step in whatever direction? Where do you go from there?
So from starting where you are, then, you know, because from starting where you are, normally when you look at the continuous improvement model, in fact, it's the second step where you are, because the first step is understanding the vision. And for instance, exactly what are the main requirements why we do that. So in fact, when you look at from that perspective, starting where you are, in comparison with, you know, this vision, it will help you really to create this to be state. So that means to say where you want to be, okay? And when you are starting where you are, it means in that case that you reduce the scope of the to be state and you identify first things, you identify quick wins. Because in many organizations, this kind of project where you analyze the current state, as I said, you will find a lot of resistance on that. They will say you spend a lot of time, resources. Why? We know what we do it good. You know, nobody will support you in that. So if you spend a lot of time just with that, not showing some quick win, there is a very, very high probability that your project will stop very quickly. So that's what I would advise to do as a first step.
And then, so what I heard you say, it layered in there, is to take a phased approach, iterative improvements, because if you try to take on the whole thing at once, there's more resistance and more difficulty versus let's take a phased approach, iterate. And so maybe we work on metrics at the beginning, or we work on change enablement, we work on understanding value streams, and then layer it out versus the big bang. And I remember this cautionary tale, and I'm not going to say which organization was in the US, that for ITIL v3, they tried to implement all of the processes at once. And of course, it would be difficult because, you know, your current state maturity helps you build for your next level. And so how would you prioritize? Is there any method you would prioritize what to take on first or second or third or last?
It always relates to the same kind of questions, for instance, that we have with customers about which processes in ITIL. If I come back to processes, I know we talk about practices in ITIL 4, but we all know what process is. Which process needs to be implemented in which order? And in fact, when you look at that, you have always two main approaches. One is to start with the users, okay? So that means to transfer the service desk and all the related processes to the service desk. That's an approach. So that means service desk building or reviewing the catalog of services, creating some standard changes, having some service requested related to the standard changing, and so on and so on. Okay, that's one story. Another story is you don't bother at the beginning with users, but you focus on customers and sponsors. So that means in that case, you will start with service level management. And then either you will come back to the service catalog or you will go through, let's say, relationship management. Okay, so these are the main, from my perspective, the main approaches I saw in my experience. And of course, I explicitly don't talk about a technical based approach.
Right.
Because this is highway to hell.
I understand. And so here's a loaded question for you. Do you, so you understand where you are, and you have a pretty good idea of the processes that are strong and some that are weak. Do you build on the strong ones or address the weak ones first?
If you want quick wins, then you have to address the weak ones, not the strong ones, I would say. Because if you manage the strong, if you focus on the strong one, then people will not see a kind of wow effect. They will say, okay, yeah, we know that we are strong. Okay, what you mean is that instead of having, I don't know, 90% of our priority one incident, let's say, solved in 4 hours, now we are in 100. Good job. Yes, it's good, but we are already good. Okay, so know what I mean. On the other hand, if you have a lot of, let's say, complaints from the users, from the point of view of the service desk, where you know you are weak because you are not weak in what you do, but you are weak in the communication approach. You don't communicate so often on the incidents you are solving. If you manage that, it can be a quick win, and it will address something where you are weak.
And
that's what I would say.
And it helps you on adoption, right?
Yeah,
the adoption
yes.
part, especially when you're undergoing.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we talk about in terms of support. Yes, support, adoption. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I only say adoption because if we're talking about leadership changes, we're talking about this, we have to somehow address the lower levels of the culture.
Of course.
All right. So lastly, we've talked about current state. We've talked about how would we take that first or second step. How would you measure progress? And I say that because we have to know if we get there. We have to be able to measure progress and be able to celebrate wins. So I'm big on celebrating wins, but we have to measure somehow. How would you recommend?
Yeah, for that, I would say that there is, of course, in ITIL 4, we have the plan, direct, and improve, where we talk about measurement and metrics. But I would come back to the previous version of ITIL and concretely to ITIL practitioner, because in ITIL practitioner there was a kind of very useful things that could be helpful to have a kind of holistic approach to measurement. So they explained, for instance, when you want to have some KPIs, first of things, when you want to have some KPIs, you need to have CSF. So you need to have critical success factor. You emphasize that in your book, and I found it very good because many people forget that without CSF, it doesn't make sense to create KPIs. But you see many organizations focused only on KPIs. So they focus on giving you a target, but they don't give you means to meet the target. So that's absolutely nonsense. So that's one of the first things we have to do. And you mentioned it very good, very well in your book. But what I wanted to say about the practitioner is that you need to have this balanced approach. And for instance, the indicator, the family or the categories of indicators in this was very good. So you had, for instance, indicator inside out, outside in, so focus on why it's important, what we do or what we will improve for the business. Okay, so we include outside in indicators in IT. We have progress indicator and efficiency versus effectiveness indicator. So I would say that when you look at these categories of indicators, you can find a very good holistic approach for you to manage how you can, meet your targets.
So there's two that I would say are important for everyone. One of them is customer satisfaction, whether you use an NPS score or something. Because if you're trying to get adoption, you have to have some way to measure the people aspect, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the other is, I think we get focused on the time scale of like how fast we're going versus are we doing it better and matching it, as you just mentioned, back up to the value streams and what the business is trying to accomplish. One of the things that I've been on a soapbox so far here in 2021 is and ITIL 4 is just a metaphor or just an example, but whatever is important to your business customers, that's where in IT, that's where your resources should be. They should not be on anything that your business customers do not find value in. And whatever they don't find value in, retire, get it off the books, and reinvest those people, those tools, those processes into what's important to your business.
Yeah, and that's a very important point. And that can be also, and in that matter, it's also a challenge because you can have also resources dedicated to continuous improvement. Right. But from the perspective of the customer, it takes for granted that you constantly improve the quality of your services. So, it's important for you, but the customer take it for granted, So sometimes it can be tricky to get funding, for instance, for this kind of project, because they say, okay, customer will not pay any cent for that. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. And I would say this is the frontier between what you need to do for the customer and what you need to do for your services.
To deliver that service. There's parts of that service that they'll never see. They'll never see the finance person or the continual service improvement or whatever, right? But the other piece to it, or even like the software asset management licensing, they'll never see that. But it's up to us on the internal side to be able to explain value. Say, here's why you should care.
Yeah.
But I was referring more to, if I'm just using an example, business intelligence tools. Most organizations have a lot of them. But if your business is only using 2 or 3, and there's a bunch of others that were used, they're now used by 1 or 2 people, but they were used by previous regimes, let's retire those and put those resources to things that do matter. There's no reason having a bunch of BI tools that aren't being used.
Yeah, you're right. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's true, and I have the same experience, and it's a good example because now a lot of organizations are, let's say, data-driven. So business intelligence is is a very trendy example. Yeah,
it is. But everybody, I mean, we could name 7 or 8 that are in most organizations because somebody sometime really liked it, and you're paying for things that you're not really getting the, to use a US term, so I apologize, a bang for your buck on. You're not getting that impact that you want. So David, thank you for coming on. David is, and I'm tooting his horn and then I'm gonna let him do it. David does ITIL 4 training and Prince 2 training, as well as consulting in Europe. And so please hit him up, especially if you need it in the myriad of European languages that he speaks. David, tell us how they could get in touch with you.
Okay, so the thing is that the best thing for them is to connect directly to me on LinkedIn. I'm always open to connections, and also to visit our website osiris.global. And of course, I'm sure that you will give them your auditors the information. But yeah, I thank you for that. We try to deliver the best management trainings in Europe, as you said. But we also have a customer, for instance, in the US now, and we have trainers also in the US that deliver trainings sometimes. So we speak different languages, and we like what we do, and we bring our experiences in the training courses that we deliver. It's a very difficult market, trainings. Okay, it's very competitive, and what we want to differentiate is, of course, by bringing our experiences in the training courses. I wanted to once again to thank you very much, Jeffrey, for this interview, for this podcast, and also wanted to congratulate you for this book, which is very interesting. I know I reviewed it, and not the reason why I say it's interesting, but I wish you a lot of success with this one and with the next you will publish.
Oh, thank you. And I am somebody that can't sit still, and so whenever I have time, like I do have 2 others that are a third to 50% done, and they're on topics. But this book is short. Like people like don't realize this book is 1.5 hours, 2 hour read. It's not very long of a read. And so I appreciate yourself and the other 4 who said, hey, you didn't explain this well, or you need to explain this better. And because it was valuable to me, because when I'm typing and I'm doing it myself, those other thoughts don't even occur to me. So I appreciate your perspective. And when David said his company is Osiris, it's OCIRIS. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Correct.
Global.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure people could find you. David was seeing if I'd spell it right, but I got lucky, I guess. So thanks, David. And thank you all for listening. And please hit up David and his organization if you need training or consulting in Europe or some in the US. Have a great day, David.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.